Next, we see IP traceback. Okay, that is from the given place, we try to trace back the different IPs through which this particular packet has traveled. Okay, now here we see, we know that a packet, whenever there is a DOS attack or any attack, the attacker is not going to send his actual IP address as the source address. Okay, he is going to send only some spoofed IP addresses. That is, he is going to make up some addresses and he is going to use them to create this attack. Okay, so we cannot rely on these IP addresses that are there in the packets as source IP addresses. Okay, we have to find out some other means. Okay, so here what we do is we try to identify the path or paths that are traversed by the attacked packets. Okay, now how do we do this? We have principally three approaches. Okay, one is the packet marking, next packet logging, and hybrid approaches. Packet marking is the packet keeps track of the routers that it has visited. Okay, so every packet will have the address of the router through which it is traveled. In packet logging, what we do is each router keeps track of the packets that are passing through it. Okay, so here the router is going to keep track of which are the packets that have passed through it. And hybrid approach, as the name indicates, uses a combination of packet marking and packet logging. Okay, we will see both packet marking and packet logging in detail. So first is the probabilistic packet marking method. Okay, say this is your network. Okay, now every IP address is a 32-bit address. Now, if in the packet you are going to go on adding these 32-bit packets, say your packet is moving from S to V. Your packet is going to move from S to V. Okay, say this is the path that it is going to take. Then once the packet from S moves to F, okay, with the address S, IP address S, that is this 32 bits or 4 bytes of information gets added to it. Okay, now when the packet moves to E, okay, address of F also gets added. So 4 plus 4, 8 bytes get added. Okay, now the packet moves to D, then the address of E also gets added. Okay, now when the packet leaves D and reaches C, D's address would also be added. So 4 into 4, 16 bytes. So if you are going to go through 10 hops, then 10 into 4, 40 bytes is going to get added. Okay, this overhead that you have on every packet is very high. Okay, which is not at all acceptable. Okay, we don't want very high overhead on the header. Okay, so what is the alternative? In the IP header, we know that we have a 16-bit ID field. Okay, this supports packet fragmentation and reassembly. What is packet fragmentation? All this we have studied in networks. When you have a large packet, it is going to be fragmented into smaller packets and it is going to be sent. Okay, so the ID of these packets is what is going to be there in this ID field, 16, that is of 16 bits wide. Okay, now at the receiver only, these packets would be reassembled. That is, this ID field would be used. Okay, so most of the times what we see is this ID field is not being used. So in this probabilistic packet marking mechanism, we are going to make use of the 16-bit ID field. Okay, traceback schemes use it to store partial information on intermediate routers. Okay, it is only 16 bits. Our IP address is 4 bytes. So if we are going to store the address as such, then we will not be able to store. Okay, because 4 bytes is 32 bits. 32 bits cannot be stored in 16 bits. Okay, so what we do is, in order to reduce the size of the IP address, we use a global fingerprint for each router. Okay, what do you mean by this? Okay, that is, we have studied cryptographic hash. Okay, so hashing we have studied. What we do is we take a hash of this IP address and we store. Okay, we take a hashing algorithm which creates 16 or fewer bits. Okay, and that is what will be stored in this 16-bit ID field. So now in probabilistic packet marking, suppose the packet moves from here to here, the address of S will be written into the 16-bit ID field with a probability P. Okay, some probability P is chosen, and with that probability, this address would be written there. So now if it moves to the next one, okay, and already some address has been written, okay, then, and this with probability P, the second packet wants to write, then this address would be overwritten. The address that was written by the previous one would be overwritten. Hence, to identify the perpetrator of the attack, the ingress router at the victim end will need to collect sufficient number of packets that are all part of the same flooding attack. Okay, it is assumed that each ingress router has a map of all the upstream routers from it. Yeah. Yes. Say, this is our network. Okay, a packet is moving from S. We are going to see packets that are moving from S along this path to B. Okay, so it is assumed that every router has information about the upstream routers. For example, E has the information that the packet is going to come from S and F. D has information that the packet could come from SFE or through this path or through this path or through this path. C similarly has information about this path, about this path, about this path, and so on. Okay, so every router has information about all the upstream routers that we have. Consider packet 1. Okay, say it is moving like this. Okay, it is being marked with probability P. Okay, say here it was not marked. Coming here F, there also it is not marked. Here also it is not marked. At D it is marked. So D calculates a hash of its IP address and puts that in the ID field. Okay, the center one is the ID field. Okay, you in the header, IP header, you have other fields that are this one and this one. Okay, now this alone is the ID field. Fine. Now it goes to C. Again, it's not writing. This is not writing. This is not writing. The packet reaches V. So when the packet reaches V, it sees the fingerprint D on the packet, and so V knows that the packet has taken this path. Okay, since it has the information about all the upstream routers, it knows that the packet has come through this path. Okay, since it has got D. Okay, we'll take a second example. The packet is moving, the second packet is again following the same path. Okay, it is moving from S to F. S, it is not being marked. F, it is not being marked. It comes to E, it has to be marked. So it calculates the hash value and it makes the entry in the ID field. Okay, now again, the packet moves on to D. Okay, it is not being marked. The packet comes to C. Okay, C decides to mark it. So what does C do? It calculates the hash of its IP address and it has to write here. It sees that it is already written there. Okay, it doesn't bother. It just overwrites this information. That means information that E was there is removed and C's data alone will be there. The overwriting means only the next data will be there. So only information C is here. Okay, then the packet moves to B. B doesn't write. A doesn't write. The packet reaches V. Okay, now for V to know this part, how does it know? Okay, it only knows that it has come from C. Okay, so it knows that the packet has traveled C to B to A to V. Okay, it doesn't know how it has reached C. It might have reached through this path, or through this path. Okay, that it doesn't know. Okay, how does it know? It has to collect sufficient number of packets from S to B, and using all this information, like it knows that from packet 1, D is there in the root. So it knows that DC, BA, B is 1. Okay, it has to keep collecting packets wherein your S will be writing, F will be writing, and E will be written, and from that it will trace the path. Okay, so this is probabilistic packet marking. So one problem with this is you have to keep the upstream routers are overwritten. The probability that the mark made by router F on a packet 2V survives is here. Now the packet is coming from F. F has put its mark on the packet. What is the probability that this reaches V without being overwritten? Okay. Now, what is the probability that E is going to write? It is P. Okay. Now, we don't want E to overwrite this packet. So, what is the probability that E will not be writing? It is 1 minus P. Okay. Now, when you come to D, what is the probability? Again, it is 1 minus P. So, what is the cumulative property that this packet is not being written on its path from F to D? 1 minus P into 1 minus P. That is 1 minus P square. Okay. Now, the packet is reaching C. Okay, what is the probability? 1 minus P into 1 minus P into 1 minus P, 1 minus P cube. What is the probability that the packet is not being written by B? 1 minus P to the power of 4. What is the probability that it is not being written A? 1 minus P to the power of 5. So when the packet reaches V, the probability that the data that is written by F is not overwritten, that is, it survives, is 1 minus P to the power of 5. Yeah. Next, what is the probability that a packet arriving at V is marked by router F and that mark survives? Okay, so at F, it is being written with a probability P. Okay, now at E, it should not be written. So at E, that F is written and E is not written is P into 1 minus P. Okay, at D, if you take it as P into 1 minus P whole square. Okay, same way you reach V, the probability that the packet is marked by F and not overwritten by any of these would be P into 1 minus P whole to the power of 5. Okay. In general, if you take the probability of an incoming packet at V having the mark of a router H hops away is P into 1 minus P to the power of H minus 1. Like F is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hops away. And so you got P into 1 minus P whole to the power of 5. So in general, if your router is H hops away, the probability would be P into 1 minus P whole to the power of H minus 1. Okay, so this is about probabilistic packet marking. Okay, the important consideration is the number of packets needed at V to reconstruct the attack path. Okay, this is closely related to the probability P, the distance between V and the source, attack source, that is your H. Next, we see packet logging. Here, each router attempts to keep track of every packet that passes through it. Packet logging now makes use of the idea of a packet fingerprint or digest. Now, here, the router has to keep information about the packet. Okay, now the packet size is going to be very large. We can't possibly store it. Instead, we take a fingerprint or a digest of the packet. That is, we take a hash of the packet. Now, how do you take the hash? That is using a well-designed hash function. We have seen one important property of the hash function is the hash values should be distributed uniformly across all the possible hash inputs. Okay. One interesting feature about packet logging is it can even help you to track even a single rogue packet. Assume that each router stores each packet received by it in the last 5 minutes. Okay, So suppose the victim wishes to obtain the exact path followed by the path received by it. Okay, what we do is, the idea here of packet logging is the victim's ingress router A queries each of the adjacent routers. Okay, so here, say you have received a packet from A, then it will query B whether the packet has passed through B. It will query H, and it will query G whether the packet has passed through it. Then B will check its database. It will find the hash of the packet available here, so it will reply. Now what B will do is, it will check its routers with which it is in contact, that is C and M. Okay, now C finds it there. Okay, now C will check its incoming routers, this, whichever router is here, whichever router is here, and D. Now D will reply, will have it. Now D will check for its incoming, that is E. Okay, now E will check for F, this, and this. It will find it in F. F will find it in S. So thereby, we will be able to establish the path as S, F, E, D, C, B, A, V. Okay, that is the idea of packet logging. Okay, the storage requirements obviously is going to be very large. Okay, so suppose the link speeds are 1 GB per second, and the router is operating at full capacity, that is at 1 GB per second. Okay, and say you have 6 connections or 6 links to this router, then over a period of 5 minutes, you will be collecting about 1 terabyte of data, okay, which is very, very high. How do you reduce this? Okay, that is reduced by using a space efficient data structure that is called as the Bloom filter. Okay, let n be the maximum number of packets to be stored in a router in a given interval, say 7 minutes. Okay, we assume that in 7 minutes, any DOS attack will be found out and rectification action will be taken. Okay, each time an element has to be inserted. If you have to insert a packet, then k hash functions on the packet will be computed. Okay, again, k is a design parameter. So for every packet, k hash functions will be calculated. Okay, the output of each hash function is, say, w bits. Then you will have a bit array which is called as the Bloom filter. Okay, the size of the Bloom filter would be 2 to the power of w. Since the hash function size is w bits, okay, the size of the array m would be m equal to 2 to the power of w. So the size of the Bloom filter array would be 2 to the power of w. Okay, to speed up the computation, we do not take hash of the entire packet. Okay, we only take some invariant parts of the IP header, source address, destination address, etc. Okay, and a small part of the payload, say only 10 bytes of the payload. We are not going to take the hash of the entire thing. So the computation time for the hash gets reduced. Okay. Now, this is your bit array. Okay, the size is going to be m bits. So 0, 1, 2, etc. up to m minus 1. Okay, so now when you get a packet, immediately k hashes are calculated. Okay, in this example, say we take k equal to 3. Then 3 hashes are taken, and that would be h1, h2, h3. 3 different hashes are, 3 different algorithms are used, and you get 3 different hashes, each w bits wide. Okay, now this information, the hash value is not stored here. Okay, now you take these 3 as indices to the array. Okay, say h1 is this index, then that bit would be set to 1. Okay, h2 is, say, the index of this bit, then that bit would be set to 1. h3 is, say, index of this bit, then this bit would be set to 1. Okay, initially all the values of the bit array are 0. Okay, now you calculate the hash, and hash is used as the index to the array, and the corresponding bits are set to 1. Okay, that is how a packet is entered into the system. Okay, yeah. So to check if a packet is present, what should you do? you want to check if this packet is present, then you calculate the hash. Once you have calculated the hash, you use that as the index and check whether those entries are 1. Okay, if all those 3 entries are 1, that means the packet has been entered, okay, or has gone through this router. Okay, if any one of these values is 0, that means this router has not encountered this particular packet. Okay, so that is how the presence of a packet is checked. Now, by this method, if a packet has not entered, then you are sure that the entry will not be there. Okay, so there will not be any false negative. Okay, but suppose a packet has not passed through it, then also it may indicate that the packet has passed through it. That is, there is a possibility of a false positive. Okay. So how does this false positive take place? Okay, say you have 3 packets here. Okay, P7, P309, P1054. Okay, the P7's hashes are these 3. So the 3 values are marked as 1. P309's values are these 3. Okay, so those 3 bits are marked. And P105 is these 3. Okay, so those 3 bits are marked. Okay, now suppose you want to check P7. Actually, okay, make it as P8. Okay, now this P8 value, okay, say you're calculating the hash, and it so happens that H1 is present, H2 is present, and H3 is present. So you will say that P8 packet was found in this router. Okay, but actually P8 was not found. Okay, from where did this H1 value come? H1 value was set because of P1054 packet. H2 value was set because of P309 packet, and H3 value was set because of P7 packet. Okay, so because of 3 different packets, the values were set, but it showed as if P8 packet was found here. Okay, that is a false positive. That is the problem with this. Okay, but never you will get a false negative value. Suppose the size of the bit array is m, and you have you are expecting that n packets would be set. Okay, for a given n, the chance of a false positive decreases if you have a large n value. Okay, that is the size of the bit array. If it is very large, then false positives can be avoided. But a large m incurs again a greater storage overhead. Okay. The expression, how do you find the expression for the probability of a false positive as a function of m and k? Okay, the probability that a packet hashes to I1 is 1 by m. You have m bits of information. You are going to write into any one of this information. So it is 1 by m. Probability that a packet does not hash to I1, that it hashes to I1 is 1 by m. So does not hash to I1 would be 1 minus 1 by m. Probability that none of the n packets hash to I1. Okay, we are taking k hash functions. So it would be, you have n packets and you have k hash functions. So you have k into n computations. So this probability would be 1 minus 1 by m to the power of kn. Now the probability that at least one of the n packets hashes to I1 with at least one of the k hash functions. Okay, so one of the packets in that any one of the hash functions. Okay, at least one of them hashes is 1 minus m to the power of kn. Now the probability of a false positive is the probability that at least one of the n packets hash to I1 with at least one of the k hash functions, then at least one of the n packets hash to I2, then at least one of the n packets hash to Ik. Okay, so that would be this whole thing to the power of k. That is 1 minus 1 by m to the power of kn whole to the power of k. Okay, so this is the probability of a false positive. Clear? So this is about packet logging. By using Bloom filter, we are able to reduce the amount of space that is required to store the information about a packet in the router. Fine.